Oh, we're not playing right now, honey. Hello, my name is Hannah. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in June. I read 5 books this month. And anyone who has watched literally any of my videos will notice an absence. So I didn't finish King of Scars this month. And I literally said in my May wrap-up that if I was still reading King of Scars a month from then, that I should be yelled at. So I freely accept that. I just kind of was getting fatigued with it, so I put it down for like a week or so, but I'm back. We just had a long weekend. I only have like 80 pages left, so, you know, barring like force majeure, I should be done with it by my July wrap-up. But yeah, I definitely went quality over quantity this month. That's for a couple reasons. One is I'm just kind of tired. I've read a lot the last couple months, so I'm just kind of taking it easy. I've been rewatching Teen Wolf. That's not a real excuse, but that has been pretty time consuming. And one of the books I read this month was very, very big and took a long time. Ruthie is back in the room today, chewing on her chew toy, just making disgusting mouth clicks, so I'm really sorry about that. Something else I just want to get in front of in this video. I read one book that was translated from Norwegian and one book that is heavily inspired by Chinese history and folktale, I guess. So between those two, I'm going to pronounce some stuff wrong in this video. I'm making an earnest effort to pronounce things correctly, but I don't speak either of these languages or have like any kind of working knowledge of them. So I'll just talk about those when I get to each book. But I'm earnestly trying to say things correctly. So the first book that I finished in June was the Penelope Ad by Margaret Atwood. I read it as an ebook on Hoopla, kind of to break up the arcs because I was going from one long arc to another. This book is basically a very abbreviated account of the time period in the Iliad and the Odyssey told from Penelope's point of view. Penelope, of course, being Odysseus's famously patient wife, is co-told by a great chorus of Penelope's ladies' maids, who famously, when Odysseus finally gets home, he has them all killed and kills all of them. So, yes. Something very funny. I have read my Madeline Miller. I've read my Pat Barker. I still have not read the Odyssey or the Iliad, and that's on me at this point. But this was great. It was a very quick read. There is a novel version and like a stage play version because it can be read in a couple hours. I read the novel version. It was great. It was such a quick read, and it is such a unique take on like a literally ancient story. I don't really have too much to say about it because it was just really great and it was pretty straightforward in what it is. Very much for fans of Circe by Madeline Miller. If you have read Circe and you're like, I want something that is about as close to that as I can get without actually being that, read the Penelope Ad, because that's what this is. And Margaret Atwood is just like the perfect author to have written this kind of feminist take on this really ancient story. I will say kind of an odd thing I will say is that Helen of Troy is like such a bitch, and it's really funny almost. That's just like, yeah, we're doing like a fresh feminist take on the Iliad and the Odyssey, but fuck Helen. She's the Regina George of Troy. The second book I finished was Will and Testament by Vigdis Hjorth? Oh god. So yeah, this one I had the audiobook and I have like 5 or 6 days worth of Norwegian Duolingo under my belt. that I did in a scam fever along with everyone else in like 2017. All of the proper nouns were lost to me. So this book tells about a woman named Bergliot. Bergliot. I don't know. But this woman is in dispute with her whole family, basically, ostensibly over her parents' will. She feels that herself and her brother are being treated unfairly in comparison to her two sisters in the way that the inheritance will shake out. She is mostly estranged from her family. She does not get along with her parents, and over the course of the book, a lot of it is kind of told in her memories, and we kind of find out how this came to be. And like, kind of a spoiler warning, but also not, because I don't know what's supposed to be like a reveal and what's just supposed to be known about this book. But I'm going to be kind of talking about like the actual content of this book. I picked it up because a couple years ago now, I saw it on a table. I think it was a table of translated fiction at Hodges Figgis, and I just thought it sounded really interesting. I was, you know, like a good like grounded family drama is always something that I find usually worth picking up. And I had a couple extra loans left on Hoopla at the end of May, so I just grabbed it. Also, I ran a poll on my Instagram to choose what audiobook I was listening to next, and the people said Will and Testament, so follow my book Instagram that I barely post on anymore. The book itself is really odd to read. It's not very plot heavy. Overall, I liked it. It's definitely leans on the theme of, again, to kind of spoil it, but not spoil it because that's what the whole damn book is. It's basically how like the trauma of abuse can affect victims years and years and years down the line, and all the myriad ways that that manifests itself in someone's thoughts, actions, in everything. That was summed up pretty well in this quote, I thought. The presence of my lost childhood, the constant return of the loss, had made me who I was. It was part of me. It pervaded even the slightest emotion in me. So that's kind of like the thesis statement of the whole book, really. There's this really interesting stylistic choice that Vigdis Hjorth makes, where multiple paragraphs or multiple passages will kind of start with the same sentence or couple sentences, and then they'll kind of like splinter from there. We're very much following the protagonist's train of thought and how it's kind of disorganized and it's impossible to put into sequence and make trauma make sense. And while it's like very deliberately done and, you know, effectively done, it just makes the reading experience like kind of difficult and weird. Overall, it was a pretty slow, like pretty brutal reading experience. The reveal comes midway through the book, even though it's heavily implied before that the protagonist was sexually abused by her father when she was a child, and that is why she was initially estranged from her family, and then her family did not offer her any support or belief, really, and that is why she is so far estranged from her family and why she has such a hard time even being in the same room as any of them. So right before reading it, I just did a quick Google search because it was like I didn't really know that much about it, and most of the reviews on Goodreads were in Norwegian, so they were kind of not helpful for me. But this book was very controversial upon its release in Norway. There's really good, I believe it's a New Yorker article, kind of explaining why this book caused such a rift in the Norwegian literary scene. It is really seen as kind of sensational and kind of like airing out dirty laundry and a little like dramatic. The author insists that it's not autobiographical, though. Her family has been very publicly critical of the book. They really don't like it. Her sister has, I guess, written a rebuttal book that I don't know that I'll pick up. But I think because there's this insistence that this book is not written from a lived experience, it almost makes the reveal of the abuse and like the reveal of the reason feel like really sensational and really dramatic, and it just kind of feels off. Like it's like a cheap shock or something. So I don't know. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I had the audiobook, because if I didn't have the audiobook, I don't know that I would have finished this, because it's just so bleak. And the writing is good, but it's really slow, and I just had a really hard time getting through it. But it was good. I don't know. I'm still very of two minds about this book. I just kind of want to put it behind me. But yeah, absolutely check out content warnings online before you pick it up, because there are some pretty candid discussions of abuse, sexual abuse, general like psychological distress that stems from being the victim of a violent crime at a young age. See, I think when I finished reading it, I was like, that was weird. I don't think I loved it. But the more I kind of sit with it, I think the more I cool on it, and the more I'm just like, you know? All right, the next book I finished was a very interesting one. I read The Kid Stays in the Picture by Robert Evans. I listened to the audiobook on Libby. I first became aware of this book late 2019. Well, I was aware of the book. I knew it existed. I knew the documentary of it existed. But Robert Evans passed away in late 2019, and I remember seeing people on Twitter obviously talk about his book, and specifically talk about the audiobook of his book, which he reads himself. This book is basically an account of his career, his early life and his career. He started as an actor, became a producer and the head of Paramount. He worked on The Godfather, he produced Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby, Popeye. He talked about how proud he was of Popeye and how that was one of his favorite movies that he did. It's like, all right. You also learn about the movies that he didn't make, like Funny Girl, and you also learn a lot about his personal life. And this book was fascinating. There's just a lot of stuff, even being vaguely aware of him as a figure in Hollywood, he was way more involved in way more stuff than I really realized. And there are parts of this book that are weird. He's not a fan of Sharon Stone. He's very blunt about that. Apparently she accused him of murder. I had no idea about this, and he kind of barely talks about it other than to say he hates Sharon Stone. Also, apparently he is besties with Henry Kissinger. The book opens on a story about his bestie, Henry Kissinger, which is what the hell am I reading? I almost was just what is this when I started it? But I am glad that I kept reading it, because it's just regardless of what you think of him as a person or how objectionable you find his politics, I know I certainly do, it makes for a really interesting read. And like I said, there's a couple of just really weird parts that I'm what is this? There's a really long part that's basically a limerick about an unnamed woman he had a pretty intense affair with for however amount of time. And you're halfway through it, and again, listening to the audiobook, so he's saying it in verse, and you're what the hell are we doing? Wait, what happened to the book? So I would say definitely the audiobook is absolutely the way to go. Since he was an actor before he was ever behind the scenes, he definitely knows how to read his own words, and you can practically smell the cigarette smoke, I swear to God. So yeah, this was good. It was really bizarre and very unique. I still have not watched the documentary, so I need to do that immediately. All right. Okay, so the next book. The next book is the book that took me forever and is most of the reason why there's not more books this month, but my God, was it worth it. So I read She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I got the e-arc on NetGalley. I believe that was courtesy of NetGalley and Tor, so thank you to those parties, because this book, okay, let me take a step back. I never want to be the reason that someone says a book is overhyped, or someone gets their hopes up too high for a book only to be let down by it. So this is just my opinion, just my 2 cents. Take what I say with a grain of salt. This book is so good. My Goodreads the last month has just been This book is so good. It's getting a lot of hype on like TikTok and BookTube. Like, it's getting a lot of hype, and I really think this book is deserving of all of the good press it's getting before it's even out. So this book, it's pitched as Mulan meets Song of Achilles, which was like, yeah, I'm gonna read it. But I'd say it definitely probably lands somewhere more between Poppy War and Game of Thrones, mixed in with a bit of Mulan and even less of Song of Achilles. This is where the wheels might fall off on this, because I'm going to say their names. I looked up how to pronounce the Chinese names throughout the course of this book, and I think I still don't really get it. So there's kind of two main characters, one of whom is a girl who only goes by her family name, and her name is Zhu. Zhu. And she comes from absolutely nothing. Like, her family has no money, no food. She kind of ends up on her own. So her story begins as one of like an assumed identity and like bare bones survival, and just kind of like takes off from there. Our other protagonist's name is Ouyang, I believe, who also begins with nothing. His family was all killed years ago. He begins the story as a eunuch slave to the son of a prince, and that is just his starting point, and he shoots off in a million directions as well. And basically the course of the narrative is kind of these two people's lives kind of on a collision course, and how their fates are kind of woven together even though they do not know each other. This book has everything. This book has like very complicated political machinations. There's alliances and double crossings and betrayals, and there's just so much happening. There's yearning, there's gender, there's so much gender in this book. But I absolutely love this, if that was not abundantly clear already. This is some of the best high fantasy I've ever read, and I don't say that lightly. The ebook, how I had my font on my phone, I read this all on my phone, was like over 950 pages or so. But in that time, there is no lull. It never gets slow or feels like you're waiting for the next thing to happen. It's just like mounting tension and escalating stakes, and it's just one thing after another, and you're just like, I have no clue where this is going. It's also, there are a lot of characters in this book, and again, like kind of like Game of Thrones, but I didn't have any family trees or appendices to look at. So I'm gonna hold this really far back so it doesn't really focus. While I was reading, I had to like keep notes. You can maybe even see where I've had to like white out things, because it was like, oh no, he died. Oh no, he's his cousin. That's her sister. Like, it was so good. It was so good. I don't know how to talk about this book. It was that great. It's out July 20th. I think that's the same day that Night Bitch comes out. So you have a wealth of options if you go to your local bookstore on July 20th. So that book did take me the better part of a month to read. So after that, it was very close to the end of the month. I was like, I just kind of want to pad it out with like one more ebook, but something very short that I can just kind of like. And that ended up being Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops by Jen Campbell. I read the ebook on Hoopla. This has been on my radar for a really long time, just kind of as a bookseller. I would see some of these funnies shared every once in a while. But yeah, it was very cute. It was very fun. I loved some of the illustrations, and just made like a really nice palette cleanser after reading a big, huge, heavy book. That this book was literally just like a list of funny quotes. Jen Campbell is British and wrote all of her passages as a British bookseller. There were submissions from North American booksellers as well. It was just so funny how like some things are evidently universal. Like I said, I've worked as a bookseller for almost 2 years in the US. Over that, God, 4 years? Oh my God. Off and on for 4 years, I've been a bookseller in the US. There was also about a couple months where I was a bookseller in Ireland, so it's very funny to compare and contrast. But there are some things that are just universal, I guess. People forgetting that dragons are not real. People asking if Anne Frank ever wrote any other books. No, she didn't. People like using your service as a bookseller and you're having really good conversations with them and you're recommending them titles and they're recommending you titles and you're just like really vibing with the customer. And then when they go to check out, they're like, I'm probably just gonna get them on Amazon. It just makes you like, so yeah, that was fun. I think I read it all in one day. So it was just really short. And it was a really sweet little read. So yeah, that's all I have was those 5 books. Had a really good reading month. Again, went quality over quantity today, but that's all right. Hand to God, by the end of July, I will be done with Rule of Wolves. It's almost impossible for me to not be done with Rule of Wolves by the end of July. I swear to God. So that is all. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.